Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everything in Moderation, the international version, our inaugural episode. And we have two fresh faces to join me on this journey. We have Danny and Alejandro. Please introduce yourself, guys.
How's it going, guys? I'm Danny. I'm an expert in tech and foreign policy, so that's why I'm here.
Going on, everybody? My name is Alejandro. Expertise, I would say, is in South American foreign relations and investments.
Awesome. So we go to South America first today. Alejandro, do you want to get us started on that?
Sure, absolutely. So recently I went to theguardian.com, that's the source, and they had a picture showing the Chileno people. They are essentially demanding a strong sense of change and reform when it comes to their constitution because Chile became democracy in 1990 after they had Augusto Pinochet. He was a dictator. He ruled from 73 to 1990, and he promoted a lot of economic growth, but he severely punished like opposers, and he was really hard on like the whole country. So a lot of like the policies and a lot of like the amendments that went into the constitution didn't really support the people as a whole. So going back to the original picture, there's a lot of people protesting in the streets, a lot of young people, a lot of people that are part of the minority, and you can see a lot of like Chileno flags, like they're upside down. So it resembles and symbolizes a lot of distress and going on in the country. So, um, and because of that, we see that there have been over 13,800 Chilean people that have been killed, and more than 500,000 people have been infected by the coronavirus as a result of these radical like changes.
And I would say that just right there, you can tell how passionate they are about change because if they're willing to go out there and miss a pandemic, it's pretty life or death stuff. So,
Definitely.
um, Alejandro or Danny, do you know what policies were in like the Constitution that were like inherently like destructive?
The thing that I got out of the older Chilean constitution that was very neoliberal, and when I say that, almost everything, like even in their social policy, it really like focused on free market techniques. So like even education, healthcare, and things like that. And Social Security, another example, it really was just focusing on the free market, and probably was the reason, and also the dictatorship for the new constitution. So they're looking to rectify that. But that's what I can see being very destructive in nature, especially since Chile is not like a huge country. So like neoliberal policies don't really work that well when it comes to smaller nations. But
Mm. Alejandro, did you find a similar thing? Are you
So
policy?
I, I found it interesting. Like I found some issues regarding inequality in like pensions, education, and healthcare. So obviously, if it's drafted during a dictator era, a lot of political parties are banned. You don't really get influence or input from parties or organizations that represent people. So even though it could lead to like a booming economy, like it did, like the Chileno people, they weren't really feeling the share of like the winnings because they didn't feel represented. So
And that is a totalitarian government in a nutshell.
yeah,
Strike down all opposition, maintain power. um, so these protests began because there was like a hike in subway fares. I think that was what really like sparked it, and then eventually it just evolved into like we need a dramatic change. So, in pretty recent news, on October 25th, 2020, 78% approved of the new constitution. They voted on it. Um, it's funny that how like there's still it's a majority, but there's still people who didn't want it. Um, so now the implications of that are that there's going to be an elected body of 155 citizens to draft the new constitution. The previous system had half the members were elected citizens and half were lawmakers. Um, this constitution could take 2 years to be drafted, so it's not something that's gonna, we're not gonna see an immediate effect of it yet, but I think that it's overall a good thing, and they're celebrating it very passionately. So
Yeah, definitely a good thing going from dictatorship to democracy. Love to see it.
I've looked into actually like the people who oppose the Constitution. I was very interested in seeing that, because when I saw that the 78%, and obviously that's a pretty huge majority, but I was still interested in seeing what the argument was for the opposing side. And it wasn't even that like they were like, oh no, we must maintain it's like the elitist people. It's not even that. It was just that some people, or the people that I saw that were interviewed, thought it would create false expectations and ruin stability, which would hurt the economy, which would only fuel more political unrest. What do you guys feel about that argument?
I don't think they're wrong. One of the big factors when it comes to like a nation kind of like just blowing up is really like huge change or any kind of shock to the system. So those people are probably worried about, anarchy, just because they're not going to have full on blown constitution until what you said 2 years from now.
Yeah.
So I could see why there's some holdouts, but 78%, that's a lot. So not a lot of people don't believe in that.
Alejandro?
Well, I mean, 78% is hefty. Obviously, it's a good representation. But people are upset, honestly. Like, a lot of it has to go into like the share of wealth. So like just 1% of the population, like that's where a lot of the country's wealth goes to, and it leaves like a lot of like the nation like drowning in debt. So the result, like 36 people were killed, like hundreds were wounded, and then a lot of people were tortured or like sexually assaulted by like the Chilean police.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a lot of change that needs to go on. There's a lot of people playing on like emotions. I don't think they're like they're trying to focus in on what needs to be done to be changed, but at the end of the day, like it's just overwhelming for like the people to try to replace like this dictator era constitution with something new. Like it's a very radical change.
Mm-hmm.
So getting like certain policies or getting a certain structure in place to move forward is definitely going to take some time. So 2 years is definitely a good window, but I wouldn't honestly be surprised if it took a little bit of more, because heads are going to be butting nonstop back and forth. So it's going to stir up a lot of questions, especially for like foreign direct investment and everything.
Like, you're talking 155 people, the chances that they all agree, nah. You see it here. But I'm interested in seeing like how who they elect. Is it just like random? I'm sure it's not, but like how are these people going to be qualified? That's like one of my main questions.
Previous political involvement, a lot of probably like heavy hitters when it comes to like business. As mentioned before, like we have doing business in Latin America together. Like Professor talked about foreign direct investment and really opening up the market to like foreign influence. So you're gonna have to have somebody in that position where it's like they're really like open-minded and willing to contribute towards like the overall betterment for the country, while having effective policies and shaking the right hands. Because with this transition and this move, it's easy to get caught up in a system where you're shaking hands with people to have policies that really like support specific businesses, and a lot of people could actually get upset because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd like to add, just real quick,
mm-hmm.
is that one of the important things when choosing those peoples is you want to make sure there's a good balance of politics.
Yeah.
Because there's different sides. And, in Chile, I imagine there's more than a two-party system. There's probably like different elements in there. So you have to definitely balance that out, because if you have one party dominating that constitution, they're going to shape it. And then again, we're going to have just power structure going to one ideology, which is not good.
Mm-hmm. And that's what the basis of this podcast is: everything in moderation, a little bit of everything. Sprinkle it all in there. But this is a question towards Danny. Do you think that because of its like neoliberal past, do you think they're going to pursue like more progressive policies?
I mean, that's what they say, right? They say, or at least a a very famous law professor for Chile named Fernando Atria. He says what they need is a constitution that guarantees social rights more than market conditions. But
Mhm.
again, it really depends on who they choose to draw up this constitution. Like if they have a whole bunch of people that are the 1% of Chile, obviously they're going to be trying to protect their own interests. I
Yeah.
mean, there's free market, and then there's trying to do the good for the people, but you can't have, there's a good in between, but you can't have more on one side than the other. You really have to try to balance it out. But I definitely think that because they were neoliberal, I don't think it's going to change in 2 years, even with a new constitution. I think their free market society is definitely going to stay similar, and especially in healthcare, I definitely think that it's going to be almost exactly the same because there's industries in that. There's no real industry in Social Security or education. You could say, colleges, but that's not a huge industry in Chile. But healthcare, anywhere, any country you go to, it's definitely going to be a big factor. And I don't see healthcare changing at all in Chile.
So, did you do any research about like how the healthcare system works there?
No, I didn't really do too much research on the healthcare system in Chile.
Okay. I guess that's another problem. But um, overall, this is a great thing for
I mean,
sure.
I imagine if they're a free market system, they don't have like, Medicare for all.
Hmm.
They definitely probably have like just different health insurance companies there.
And do you think that that's a good model, or you think that there should be other options?
It's hard to say, just because Chile is a very small country comparatively. So you really have to judge it based on what they're making, whether like something like Medicare for all would even work for that said country. So it's very hard to tell without having all those aspects all collide together. But I believe in general that health insurance or just healthcare in general is a human right. But in reality, certain countries just can't do it.
What would be the reason why?
Their economy's too small. So, for example, like in America, we don't have uh, Medicare for all. Uh, However, there's a huge industry when it comes to healthcare, right? And if we were to move to that system, America would be much easier just because we have all that money there. So it's almost just like taking that and moving it to this. And plus, there's a lot of things that we could cut to pay for it as well. So, like, for example, the Bush tax cuts. You could also cut Trump tax cuts, things like that. You can pull us out of wars. Where Chile doesn't have that flexibility, so they just might not even be able to do that, and it might not be smart for them, especially right now, to even think about doing something like that. I think the best way they could do it is probably develop their economy in this new system that they have, whether it be a parliamentary or a presidency, and then see if they can slowly start moving towards something like that. But it's all up in the air until they can actually get on their feet.
Alejandro, do you have anything to say about like the economy of Chile?
Um, in respect to like the economy, I mean specifically, I want to kind of like cover like a little bit like the healthcare
Yeah, sure.
because right now it's very fragmented in Chile. In 2013, I'm getting this from Health in Americas, so from the Pan American Health Organization, and it's saying here in 2013, 76.3% of Chileans belong to FONASA, while 88.2% were members of an ISAPRE, which is ISAPRE. It's essentially just saying how fragmented the system is when it comes to both financing and like delivering services uh, privately and then obviously in the public. I just think they need to, how he said, like just improve their economy, like open up trade more and really take advantage of like foreign direct like involvement and like investment so that they can really get the economy jumping because they have a lot of potential when it comes to like tech and they have a lot of potential when it comes to a lot of innovation and creating technology. So it's like at the end of the day, if you can contribute some of the funds from there, like really hone in on like foreign investment, like you can allocate a lot of funds to like the health system, maybe something similar to what Canada does, little by little. It's not going to be overnight change, but it could really help out the people over there, because a lot of the wealth is just going to like the 1%ers in a sense, and people need change. And obviously that's why there's a lot of like fighting going on in the streets. But health coverage, if you can cover that, I feel like a lot of like it would help out the economy, honestly.
Healthcare definitely has like a correlation to the economy doing well, because if healthcare covers them, they have more money to spend, stimulate the economy that way, purchase more goods, whatnot. I want to get into their main export and import partners. What do you guys like? Who do you guys think is probably their main export partner, if you have to guess?
I'm gonna let Alejandro handle this because I'm not the economic expert here.
I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not really a total expert when it comes to Chile, specifically, but I do like how they're a very innovative country. They're not in a sense, they're not a heavy hitter, but they do have a lot of like innovations and a lot of like a lot of springing when it comes to like tech.
There's a lot to say about like a small environment too, because it could be more collective and not as like competitive. It's not like who gets what out first, it's about who gets what out, and it works. So tech as a whole is just a really like prominent industry that can move into Latin America and continue to evolve. So anything tech in Latin America is a good thing right now.
So one thing, I was just doing a quick little search up. It seems like their main export is copper, and from a tech standpoint, that's a good export. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's a relatively strong tech export. The one thing I would say is a lot of companies, for example, Facebook, Google, they like to go into countries and build up their network infrastructure. And that is one way they can get a lot of foreign direct investment, is through networks such as these, because then they can start making money, because they can be the Comcast of Chile, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So copper is a good export, and it seems like they mostly give that to China.
Yep.
Which is great, because they're running through copper at this rate. But I definitely think that's a strong export for them.
Yeah, and it all depends on the pricing for like natural resources too, because it's like the situation with Venezuela. Like they have like a whole bunch of oil, but you can't control the pricing of it. What benefit is it gonna do to your economy? I agree with you though.
And Alejandro, we talked about before like how well China does kind of has a correlation with how well Latin American countries do.
Yep.
Do you think with like in the next 10 years, Latin American countries as a whole will continue to pursue that relationship with that trade relationship with China, or maybe turn more towards the US or other countries?
Well, it all depends on who's in power and what the policies are. It all depends on like the agreements and the ties, because for example, like the United States is in a trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, obviously, because geographically it makes sense. So it's like, but also geographically, why are a lot of South American countries doing business with China if they could easily go through Central America to do business with the United States? At the end of the day, it just essentially comes down to who's in charge, and it's a give and take. What's in it for me and what's in it for you. Obviously, ties are strong with China because it makes sense to do business with them. It's it's cheaper, even though like the United States is like really like close by. Like with China, it just honestly like they just have better agreements.
Yeah. And also, just real quick, I just want to add to that. China, when it comes to anything tech related, especially cobalt, but that's not really a relevant example. Copper is kind of similar. They will try to almost own that entire industry. So what they might do in Chile is they might go in and try to buy up land there, or buy up like any kind of like place they can make a factory for copper. And then they'll become like exclusive partners. So they might try to etch some of the United States copper trade out of Chile just so they can get that monopoly there, because they do that in Africa all the time. It's part of the reason why we have to get every single tech device from China. Like, you know, you don't see iPhones being manufactured anywhere else. So they really try to encompass all that. So I think China definitely is going to keep on giving them the better deal than America would when it comes to copper, just to secure that monopoly.
It's very impressive what China's done over the past like 60 years. They went from one of the poorest nations in the world to now having one of the second best economy. Quite
Yeah.
the comeback.
That's industrial revolution for you.
Yep. Is there anything else we want to touch on with Chile?
I guess the one thing I would like to talk about is just constitutional lifespans in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we always look from the perspective of the United States. We've had a constitution ever since this country came into power, but it hasn't. It hasn't. We haven't gotten a new one. You know, it's changed a couple of times. You know, a lot of amendments, but the one thing, or the three things that really determine the lifespan of a constitution are shocks and crises, the actual structure of the Constitution itself, and the structure of the state. So, you know, we have in Chile already a lot of, you know, some crisis, the dictatorship. So that's one thing. And we got to make sure that, you know, they don't have anything like that again. And hopefully their constitution, like I said, it really needs to be balanced. And if that holds up, then, you know, that's pretty good. But the one thing I am worried about when it comes to Chile is the structure of the state. Because I'm not really sure if, you know, they're going to be that secure when it comes to this. So it'll be interesting to see how long this constitution lasts in Chile and see what kind of government forms from it.
So you think that that uncertainty could lead to like some sort of security concerns?
It's moreover that because there's not like a real structure to their politics right now, since they're you know, they're going through a whole new constitutional change, there isn't really much structure to the state right now. So they really have to be careful that, you know, the second thing I mentioned, the structure of the Constitution, because those directly relate to each other. You know, like there might be a certain party that gets into power that, you know, just goes right back to neoliberalism policies. So I definitely think they need to watch out for that, so they don't have to remake their whole constitution again, because that's happened multiple times in other countries. One example is France, for example.
What kind of inspiration do you think other countries around the world will take from this?
I would say probably just an example of how people can take control, right? So maybe, you know, we could see something like this in Belarus, you know, because they currently are under a dictatorship, and hopefully they can get out of it. But maybe they can take Chile as an example and try to redo the whole thing. But, you know, there's a whole other element with that, because that's like almost like a satellite country to Putin. So
I think it's really important to take into consideration, you know, like the vast difference between like the United States and Chile. Like Chile was constitution revolved around, you know, like dictatorship. It's obviously a way different system compared to the United States, and how the United States was organized in the sense. But the United States like really stayed, like it had this like a set foundation, and it just continued to adapt throughout the times with said like amendments. You know, Chile's kind of like taking the whole constitution, trashing it, and just getting together with what they have now, and taking into consideration the times now, and the reforms people want. So it's really going to be important to make very like educated, very smart decisions that are best for like the country as a whole, and maintain that moving forward, because if not, they could be seeing issues how, are seen in like the United States right now, for example, with like something they both share is like issues regarding like police reform. A lot of people are upset when it comes to that, brutality and everything. But inspiration wise, maybe other countries like, Cuba went through something similar to, with Castro and everything. Maybe they can try to do some reform there. But overall, like it's very interesting to see like the similarities and differences between like the United States, not word for word like the Constitution wise, but similar, to see how like both countries are going through something kind of similar, but going about it different ways. And that in itself is like a story to tell. It'll be inspirational for like other countries to see, because it's just crazy how like you just scrap something and then you have to like gather around like the most powerful or influential people and make a decision for what's best for everybody, not just them, but like moving forward too.
Mm-hmm. So a question to both of you: Chile in 10 years, what could we get an idea of what it'll look like?
Heavy hitter. Honestly, when it comes to innovation, and when it comes to the relationship they have with like China, because China is gonna take advantage of like the raw resources and a lot of the people too in South America, how they're willing to like go at it and just really like do a lot of business. Like Colombia is another example. Brazil, a lot of like the industry, like the economies there, like a lot of people are really like into like foreign, relations and doing business and implementing a lot of technology. So like South America right now is kind of like a sleeper, and then in 10 years you're gonna see like a boom in like their economy and how they're gonna just swing up. And Chile is gonna be one of those countries to do it.
Danny?
So it's hard for me to even have an answer for that. I really think it's a coin toss, just from like other countries and their history. It could either, like I said, they could take advantage of what they have in exports, especially in the new tech age with copper, and just really have a good structure. And then they have to also have a good constitution to begin with and good people to lead their country. But they don't have that, then they're going to end up repeating themselves, or they just might get stuck in another dictatorship. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But I'm definitely not here to call it in 10 years right now, just because there's a lot of elements when it coming to making a whole new constitution, and that leaves the country vulnerable as well.
Any final thoughts from either of you?
Overall, just put the right people in the position of power to do what's best for everybody. Like I said, not during the time, but moving forward, taking into consideration the past, implement, a lot of foreign policies that didn't work, that did work. But at the end of the day, just really hone in on what the strengths of Chile are. Do a lot of exporting, importing, and keep strong foreign relations, because at the end of the day, like foreign involvement is very important in order to advance, but at the same time limiting it in a sense to where like the country has a lot of control over its own economy.
Yeah, you don't want too much reliance. Danny?
I guess my final thought is I hope a lot of countries that are facing similar problems take the Chilean model and kind of just run with it and see what they can do, see what new things they can bring to their government, because there's a lot of governments around the world that are extremely flawed. I mean, go and look up the corruption index. Like, I can't even tell you how many countries are in the red, but that's not good, and it's really not good for their economy. So I hope that people rise up, they start protesting, because if you're a citizen of a country, you're the person, you are a person that could change that about your country, and you just have to take examples from Chile. So I really hope people really just take this to heart.
100% agreed. We'll end it there. And now we got these episodes coming out on Fridays. We're going to take a new topic every week, tackle a different country, different developments in countries that we've already covered. It'll be cool to see how countries develop over time with how we do our coverage. So That's it, everybody. Have a good one.
All right. See you later.
See ya.